The rain was coming down in thick, relentless sheets, turning the highway into a long, silver blur that swallowed headlights and hope alike. Wind battered the sides of the truck like invisible fists, and the wipers moved back and forth with tired determination, barely keeping up. It was the kind of night when most people prayed to reach home quickly, when kindness felt heavy and inconvenience felt dangerous. That was when the truck driver saw them on the side of the road, a small family walking through the storm, soaked to the bone, carrying more fear than luggage. In that single moment, with rain hammering the windshield and traffic rushing past, one simple decision stood between indifference and a life-changing miracle. If you believe that small acts of kindness can change lives, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who still believes in humanity, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more real, heart-touching stories about second chances and hope. The truck driver's name was Daniel, though most people on the road never knew it. He had spent nearly 20 years behind the wheel, logging miles that could wrap around the world more than once. His life had become measured in rest stops, fuel receipts, and deadlines. Once, long ago, he had a family of his own waiting at home. Once, he had believed life followed a straight road. But divorce, financial pressure, and years of absence had carved a quiet emptiness inside him. Driving was no longer just a job. It was an escape, a way to outrun memories that resurfaced whenever he stopped for too long. That night, he was already exhausted, running behind schedule, and thinking only about delivering his cargo and finding a place to sleep. The storm made everything harder. Visibility was poor, and every mile demanded full concentration. That was why the sight on the shoulder of the road caught him off guard. At first, he thought it was debris or a broken-down vehicle. Then the headlights swept over human figures, 3 of them, a man holding a child tightly against his chest and a woman walking close beside them, her jacket pulled over the child's head in a futile attempt to shield them from the rain. They were moving slowly, heads bowed, clothes clinging to their bodies, shoes soaked through. Cars sped past without slowing, spraying water and cold air as if the family were invisible. Daniel's foot hovered over the brake. He felt the familiar internal debate rise up, sharp and urgent. Stopping on a highway in a storm was risky. He was already late. He didn't know these people. He had learned, through years of hard experience, to keep moving, to mind his own business. Yet something in that scene pierced through his defenses. Maybe it was the way the man leaned protectively toward the child, or the woman's careful steps, as if everyone might be her last strength. Maybe it was simply that they looked like people who had run out of options. He passed them by, heart pounding, telling himself it was safer not to stop. But in the side mirror, he caught one last glimpse of the child's small arm wrapped around the man's neck, and something inside him broke. He thought of nights long ago when he had driven through storms knowing his own child was warm and safe, waiting. He thought of how easily life could unravel. Before his mind could talk him out of it, Daniel slowed the truck, flicked on the hazard lights, and carefully pulled over ahead of them. Rain poured down as he climbed out of the cab, his boots hitting the wet asphalt. The family froze when they saw him, fear flickering across their faces. Strangers stopping on dark highways were rarely a good sign. Daniel raised his hands slightly, keeping his voice calm and steady, and motioned toward the truck. He could see the relief and hesitation battling in their expressions. Slowly, cautiously, they approached. Up close, the reality of their condition hit him hard. They were drenched, shivering, and exhausted beyond words. The child's lips were pale, eyes half closed from cold and fatigue. Without hesitation, Daniel opened the passenger door and helped them climb inside the warm cab. The contrast was immediate. The hum of the engine, the blast of warm air, the simple miracle of being dry. The woman let out a quiet, shaky breath she seemed to have been holding for hours. The man clutched the child tighter, murmuring silent thanks with his eyes. Daniel handed them bottled water and an old blanket he kept for emergencies, watching as the child curled into it like it was the safest place on earth. As the truck merged back onto the road, Daniel learned pieces of their story, not through dramatic speeches, but through small details and heavy silences. The man's name was Raphael, and the woman was his wife, Elena. The child, barely 5 years old, was their daughter, Sophia. They had moved to the city months earlier, chasing the promise of work that never materialized. Savings vanished quickly. When rent fell behind, eviction followed without mercy. Their car had broken down days ago, and every attempt to find help had ended in rejection or indifference. That night, they were trying to reach a distant relative who might, possibly, take them in. Walking in the rain felt desperate, but staying where they were felt worse. Daniel listened as the rain drummed against the roof, each mile stretching between the past and whatever future awaited them. He felt a strange tightening in his chest. Their story echoed his own fears, the fear of falling, of failing, of becoming invisible. He realized how thin the line was between his life and theirs. A few different turns, a little less luck, and he might have been the one walking in the rain. He made a decision then that went far beyond offering a ride. Instead of dropping them at the nearest exit, Daniel adjusted his route. He knew of a small town not far ahead with a community shelter run by people who actually cared. He also knew he could afford to be late, just this once. The company might complain, but he could live with that. What he couldn't live with was leaving this family to chance again. The storm began to ease as they approached the town, rain thinning into a steady drizzle. Streetlights appeared like quiet guardians in the dark. At the shelter, warm light spilled from the windows, a sight that made Elena's eyes fill with tears. Daniel parked the truck and walked them inside, staying until he was sure they were registered, fed, and safe. He watched as Sophia accepted a bowl of soup with both hands, steam rising like a promise. The sight struck him deeper than he expected. Something long dormant inside him stirred. Purpose, maybe, or redemption. But Daniel's kindness didn't end there. Before leaving, he pressed some money into Raphael's hand, ignoring his protests. He wrote down his phone number, telling them to call if they needed anything. As he climbed back into the truck, he felt lighter than he had in years, even though the road ahead was still long and uncertain. Days passed, then weeks. Daniel returned to his routine, but the memory of that rainy night stayed with him. He wondered what became of the family, whether his help had truly mattered. Then one afternoon, his phone rang while he was parked at a rest stop. It was Raphael. His voice trembled with gratitude as he explained how the shelter had connected them with local assistance. Elena had found part-time work. Sophia was warm, safe, and laughing again. They were rebuilding, slowly, painfully, but with hope. Daniel sat there, staring at the dashboard, feeling tears sting his eyes. For the first time in a long while, he felt proud of something unrelated to miles or money. What Daniel didn't know was that his decision that night was changing his own life as much as theirs. The simple act of stopping had cracked open his isolation. He began to see the road differently, not just as an endless stretch of asphalt, but as a place where lives briefly intersected. He started carrying extra blankets, extra water. He checked on stranded drivers. He volunteered on his days off at shelters near his routes. Each small act stitched something back together inside him. Months later, Daniel received a letter. Inside was a crayon drawing of a truck under a bright sun, with 3 stick figures smiling beside it. On the back, in careful handwriting, Elena had written a note thanking him for seeing them when no one else did. She wrote that Sophia wanted to be brave like the truck man when she grew up. Daniel held the letter for a long time, the hum of the road fading into the background. Life didn't magically become perfect for any of them. Daniel still drove long hours. The family still faced challenges, but something fundamental had shifted. They all knew now that kindness could arrive in the middle of a storm, that a stranger's decision could redirect a life's path. That knowledge carried weight. It offered strength on hard days and light on dark ones. As the seasons changed, Daniel eventually took a shorter route, choosing stability over escape. He reconnected with his own child, awkward at first, then slowly with warmth and honesty. He spoke often of the night he stopped in the rain, not as a heroic tale, but as a reminder of how close he had come to driving past his own redemption. And somewhere in that small town, Sophia grew taller and stronger, her laughter filling rooms instead of being lost to the sound of rain. Raphael and Elena worked tirelessly, grateful not just for shelter, but for the proof that the world still held goodness. All of it traced back to a single moment on a stormy highway, when one tired truck driver chose compassion over convenience. If this story has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment right now to like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder of kindness, and subscribe to the channel so more stories like this can be told. Your support helps keep these messages of hope alive. Before the video ends, we have a special request for you. Please comment below and tell us, have you ever experienced a moment where a stranger's kindness changed your life, or where your kindness changed someone else's? Your words might inspire someone who is struggling right now, because sometimes all it takes to change everything is the courage to stop in the rain.